The heart of the labor movement is workers themselves, and that's what too often gets left out of the story. You know, we all know that at Starbucks board of directors meetings, there's this empty chair, and the empty chair is supposed to represent the interests of the barista. And several years ago, I think there was almost like, oh, that's nice. And today we're like, no, that's really not so nice. If you're going to have a chair there for the barista, then there should actually be a barista sitting in it. That's the kind of shift in our own thinking that has come about for a lot of people with this revitalization of the labor movement and the realization of its importance at this time. So nobody can tell us more about that, what it means to be a barista, why people at Starbucks are unionizing, the things that they're going through, what the challenges are, what the hopes are, more than baristas themselves. So guys, thank you so much for being here and being willing to tell your story. Dylan, you're the barista that I've known for a while. Why don't we start with you? Tell us about your union organizing, why you're doing this, what your hopes are for the country, and where you feel the process is right now.
Yeah, I'm Dylan. I'm a shift supervisor in Richmond, Virginia. The name of my store is Westchester Commons. This next week will be my 5th year working with the company. So our efforts to begin unionizing began at the tail end of 2021, post Buffalo, starting the initial wave of stores unionizing in America. I'd had a unique interest in unionizing Starbucks since the very beginning of my career with them. I had done some research in 2018 when I began about efforts to unionize the company, and quickly realized this is a group effort type of thing. So it really was just something I had had in mind. But when Buffalo came together with their efforts, I began trying to spread sentiment in my store, trying to educate people on the efforts of unionizing. And thankfully, I was joined by a lot of like-minded people due to the surge in new practices that Starbucks had been bringing on that were, since the pandemic, stripping away certain privileges that we had had as baristas. That we felt were protections on us and things that made us feel like our job was more secure. So the effort to begin unionizing began in the beginning of 2022 for my store. We had our election by mail. Tomorrow will be a year since our verified election, which we won 13-8 in my store, along with 4 other stores in Richmond that all won their efforts to unionize. So we have I think a total of 7 or 8 stores in Richmond that all unionized within the span of a few months successfully. We were a big chunk of the initial wave of the campaign, but we're at 300 plus stores now in the total movement, and it's only ever gaining much more speed as the days go by.
So, how would you describe the essential disagreement between you and Howard Schultz? What is it that he believes about the company that is at odds with what you believe about the rights of workers at the company?
Howard believes that he keeps saying this thing about, we believe that a third party should not come between the company and its workers, when we have stressed more than enough times that we think the chain of command is broken at Starbucks, where there is no real communication between the lower end of the pole to the top, really. Someone like Howard, I think, is so disconnected from what's really happening at his company that he only really cares about the core tenets and values that he preaches about to make an effort of public image at the end of the day. As well as the fact that it doesn't matter about what the company thinks if a union should be a part of it or not. It's up to the workers to decide if that is going to happen, and that's why unionizing is such an important thing for workers of especially in the service industry today, because we make up such a large amount of a certain market. And like I said, there's just this large disconnect, I think, between management going up the ladder, that just whatever is happening in the bottom is completely left off of the books for them.
What is it that you and other baristas want that Howard Schultz doesn't want to give you?
It's unique between stores because we have the ability to unionize individually and bargain for individual contracts for each store, but we get to make up this greater movement among the national campaign that shows that there are similar things going on in all of these stores unionizing, whether that be a guarantee of hours to work, a better healthcare benefits, better protections on our reductions of hours are things across the board I hear at most every store that we've been fighting for. But it could go for things that are unique in some places, like certain dress code enforcements could be something that a store bargains for. It could be that a store wants to fight for specifically, some stores are different than the others. Some could be a cafe, some could be a drive-through. So some could fight for things in their contract that are pertaining only to drive-throughs, such as listing if we are out of product or not on signage. Was something that was brought up to me that wouldn't apply to a cafe store. So there's these individual things that make up the contracts, but you get to see by communicating and by coordinating these contracts together that there's a lot of overlap between all of these stores that are fighting for the same things.
Does Howard Schultz say that you could get those things from him without unionizing?
Howard, the one thing that Howard likes to say the most is just that you won't get anything better from Starbucks, implying that they won't give us anything better than we already have in a union contract, which is a weird thing to express in front of Congress or in front of the entire world watching, really, as bargaining doesn't begin from the ground up. It begins from what we already have. So it would imply that we will get zero things out of the contract and that the union will poison the company, which is probably what he thinks will happen.
Riley, tell me your story. Where are you?
Yes, my name's Riley Fell. I'm 19. I've been with Starbucks. I'm coming up on 2 years. I started at Starbucks in Baltimore, Maryland, and then I transferred to New York City almost a year ago. So my organizing started in Baltimore. We started talking about unionization pretty soon after Buffalo as well. We ended up winning our election in June of 2022. So that's where I got into organizing, and it was a really great experience. So then when I transferred, I knew I wanted to be involved with the movement in New York City. So far, I have been working on promoting people to file complaints with the city, the DCWP to be specific, on violations against Starbucks, against the Fair Work Week law that we have in the city and just cause protections. So that's currently what I've been working on, as well as just holding or participating in rallies and having meetings with other workers across my district to get them interested.
So when Dylan said that he first started working at Starbucks, he was already in a headspace that was very focused on unionization. What about you? Was unionizing even in your consciousness when you started working at Starbucks?
Not at all. I mean, I was 17 when I started working at Starbucks. I didn't really know anything. I didn't know what a union was. I didn't really know much about it. One of my coworkers from my Baltimore store started talking about what happened in Buffalo, as well as bringing up issues within our store. What really got going for me is a lot of issues we were having around health and safety in regards to COVID. I was in contact with 2 fellow partners that did test positive for COVID. I wasn't told that they tested positive until after I tested positive. So we weren't given any kind of warning that someone in the store had tested positive. So that was a really big push for me that this is something that we need. As well as this was before I started, but I heard about it that our store had flooded. We had about 1 inch of water on the floor and we were still working in those conditions. So just basic safety precautions that really needed to be in place.
So when you noticed that these safety precautions were not in place, did you feel that there was no one that you could talk to about it, that there was nowhere that you could go to register a complaint and be heard?
Not really. Our manager was always a little bit threatening in a way. He was very anti-union and very clear about it, so it was very hard to go to him about those things. We also had a pretty absent district manager, so but even if we did have an outlet to express these things, that still wouldn't have taken away my want to unionize, because you always deserve that extra level of protection.
What was it that people told you about unionizing that made you feel, yes, my life would be better, my conditions here in the store would be better if I participated in this effort and we were able to form a union?
It was really the sense of community that I started to feel when we started to come together as workers. We started talking and binding our power. That's when I realized, oh wow, there are power in numbers. And by forming a union, we are able to have a team behind us. And that is so important, to just have those people there that are there to protect you. So really just building that sense of togetherness and having our own power over corporate was super important, because there's no power, as you as an individual worker have very limited power without numbers.
And with those numbers and with the unionizing, the power that you have is that you feel, is it more that you would actually have greater safety measures, that you would have greater capacity to take care of yourself, or is it more of the sense of the power dynamic itself, irrespective of specific circumstances, just that you would know that as workers you are in a more righteous power partnership with corporate?
It's definitely both. In regards to getting actual change, I'm not personally on the National Bargaining Committee because I'm not currently at a union store because of my transfer. But from what I have heard of bargaining proposals, one thing that we've talked about is security guards in high crime stores, which is super important. That's because I've been harassed at work, especially in the city. It's pretty common that we have some kind of threat coming into our store. So there's definitely health and safety precautions being bargained by the
Can you tell me a little bit
bargaining
about what you
committee.
mean specifically when you say you've been harassed at work?
I had a man come into the store. He asked me for a cup of hot water. I turned around to get him a cup of hot water. I turned back around, and I don't know, trigger warning, sexual assault. He had pulled his pants down and flashed me. And later, a week later, the same man, I saw him. I was looking out because the front of my store is all glass. I was looking out. I saw the same man pick up a stick and strike another man with the stick. The other man felt like an innocent man walking to work. And we had to call the police because he was on the ground.
So there are
unconscious.
stores that are asking for security guards because of the neighborhoods that they're in.
Yes.
Is corporate responding with those security guards, or do you feel that you're being ignored?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. I filed a complaint or a incident report when what happened to me happened. I haven't heard anything back. I know that there has been situations in the Times Square store. I don't know specifics about it, but that's a very high volume store, as you can imagine. But as far as I know, I have not heard any kind of corporate response in asking for
This is an
security.
example of a kind of thing, though, that you feel that if you were a union, you could collectively have the power to not only ask for security guards, but to make a demand for greater safety measures?
100%. And within the collective bargaining, I think that is definitely something that would be possible.
Do you feel hopeful right now? I'll come around to all of you at a certain point after I've heard everyone's story. Do you feel that things are moving in the right direction, or that Schultz and the rest of the corporate leadership at Starbucks is being successful at pretty much suppressing the effort?
I do feel hopeful. I know that Dylan, along with some of my coworkers from home, sat down and actually got some bargaining done today, which is pretty amazing. I do feel hopeful, especially I'm also building a bit more power here in the city. I've gotten a few more people in the financial district behind me. So things are moving, not as quick as we might like them to, but things are moving forward.
Great.
And I do feel hopeful for the
Thank
future.
you. Bree, tell me your story.
So I'm Brianna Brew, and I work at the Westchester Starbucks with Dylan. I honestly didn't really know much about unions until like Dylan started organizing it. And he did a really good job at educating me on it. And um, I realized that I didn't even know that like I had the option to do something like that. I didn't think that I had like power as a worker. So it was really cool that he helped the store with something like that. But yeah.
What is the difference between your life and your job, non-unionized? What is the difference between that and what you perceive as the possibility if in fact the store unionizes and the union effort as a whole is successful at Starbucks?
Well, currently I'm struggling a little bit. Rent's really expensive, so I don't really make enough to cover that. So I guess I'm hoping that that's something that could be helped. Otherwise I would need to find another job, which I don't want to because I love working at Starbucks and I love my coworkers a lot. So I'm just hoping to get like more stability.
So let me ask you if we could go into that a little deeper. Do you work at Starbucks full time?
I do not. I'm a student.
Okay.
So,
do you want more hours?
I wish I could, but I'm a full-time student, so it would be really hard.
So what is it that you're looking for, a higher hourly wage?
Yes. I'm sharing an apartment with someone, so I guess I'm like cutting it close every month with like my bills. So
may I ask your hourly wage?
$15.45.
And how many hours do you work a week?
I get about 15 hours a week only. Yeah, I usually get like 15, maybe 12 at the lowest.
Okay. And that was your beginning salary there?
No, my beginning salary was $12, I think.
And how long have you worked there?
About 2 or 3 years.
So
yeah.
And with the formation of a union, your hope is what specifically?
I guess just to have more power and like the say of what goes on with like our stores. I don't know. It's really hard to answer that because there's a lot of things I just like. I don't know. I guess just power in general, or like feeling like I can rely on my job. I guess
a level of job security. Would there be a level of job security for you if you were if the union were larger ever were successful?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, since we are unionized now, I actually did almost get fired, so it definitely helped with that because that would have been very tragic.
So you're saying you almost got fired. So is that something, Dylan? Were you part of this situation with Bree?
Yeah. You know, I had to step in with Bree. There was some issues over hour cutting for multiple members of our committee. After unionizing had gone through, there seemed to be a distinct effort to cut out people who didn't work full time with the company at our store. We had a significant amount of people have to leave their jobs because they weren't getting enough hours, or they were told that they worked too little hours and should consider working somewhere else. So with Bree, if I'm recalling correctly, you were having some issues because you were having some health issues on top of school issues at the same time, and our manager just refused to see eye to eye with you on it.
Yeah. As well as like the assistant manager that came in. she tried to fire me as well. So
And they would
yeah.
find issues with time and attendance that were not really as enforced on employees that were specifically either indifferent or against the union, that as they
Okay.
were about people who were outward about it.
So you feel that they were making a concerted effort to sort of purge the company of people who were part of the union effort?
Absolutely, I would not no doubt that there was at least some sort of effort in that area, and I would say that would go up to national because there's been a lot of issues of hour cutting going on specifically at union stores since the campaign has begun.
Does your friend Nick want to talk about his experience?
Yeah, I'll switch with him so he can be
Okay.
front and center here.
Hi, so my name's
Hi.
Nick. I work in the Westchester store of Dillon. I'm about 4 months away from being there for a full year, so I'm a fairly new barista into the Starbucks workspace. I joined the union efforts mainly because I've talked with Dylan a lot about it before I got the job there. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to work at his store specifically, was because it was unionized. The biggest thing I was hoping for is a higher pay per hour, mainly because I don't think it matches the cost of living in our area. And I know the argument of people saying that maybe like a barista job or a retail job isn't supposed to match like living, like it's a high school job or anything. I don't really think that's the case. I'm 26. I'm one of the few people that can work in the morning at 5:30. You can't have a high schooler doing that because they're in school. So you need adults to help run these Starbucks, and I think we need to be paid a living wage to do so.
Mm-hmm. I understand. So do you feel hopeful that that higher wage is happening? Going
I
to
think
happen?
so, yes. Since I've been there, there's been a slight increase in pay, but I don't think it's matched enough. I know during Howard Schultz's meeting with the Congress, he was saying how baristas were getting paid $17 an hour. That's at least not the case for me. I'm only paid $15.50. His argument is because he can't do it without contracts being made to allow that to happen for a union store. And I don't think that's the correct case because if it's a benefit for the baristas, it doesn't have to be in a contract. So he's basically withholding higher wages in union stores just as a form of an investment.
Did you all watch Howard Schultz's testimony before Congress?
I
Did-
watched
I
most of
didn't
it. I know
finish it.
Dylan did as well.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing.
Dylan, you watched it?
Yes.
Bree, did you?
I didn't get to finish it. I watched probably like 30 minutes.
What did you feel watching him?
It felt really it was pretty hard to watch because it just felt like he wasn't listening to the Starbucks workers, and I felt like he was calling us liars and saying that we were just lying about being treated unfairly and like getting fired and for no reason, and him doing illegal stuff with Starbucks. So it just felt really disgusting, I guess. I just felt like I wouldn't want to work for a company that talked like that, but I don't know. I guess it just, my coworkers really make a difference with that. He doesn't really matter to me, I guess. But yeah, it does feel like a little disheartening that he doesn't seem to care at all.
Riley, did you watch any of the hearings?
Yeah, I worked in the morning, so I caught the second half of it. The thing that stood out to me the most is when Howard claimed that Starbucks has not violated the law at all. That's a pretty intense claim when you have, I don't know the exact number, but multiple cases against you for unjustly firing workers, and who had a worker who was unjustly fired reinstated in New York City with full back pay by the DCWP. So that's full proof that he had violated the law and unjustly fired someone. So that was just a completely false claim, and really bold to stand up there when you have all of these cases forming against Starbucks to say that I've done nothing illegal. Starbucks has done nothing illegal. Pretty
Dylan,
intense.
how did you feel watching all the watching the hearings?
I found it dreadfully shameful that Howard, he had brought a very big onslaught of district managers and regional managers to the hearing, where they had a lot of spectators on the company side brought to watch Howard speak, and then they cleared the room as soon as he was done speaking before the panel of union supporters were brought on to answer questions. It just really, really emphasized the fact that we feel unheard by our higher-ups at our stores. So much as to the fact that all of these, executives who are supposed to be pro-partner, supposed to be here to listen to us, cleared the room as quick as they could when it was time to listen to us. As for Howard himself, he vacated his position as CEO a week before stepping in front of Congress. I think it was a very big tactic to emphasize that he wasn't eligible to answer some of those questions that were being thrown at him. It all just felt strategic to me. It didn't feel honest, a lot of the things that he was doing up there. As for, I can definitely agree with what Riley said about fired partners having actual reinstatement. A good friend of mine was fired from his position at one of the stores in Richmond. He was reinstated with back pay, and there was signage to prove it in their back room to state that Starbucks had broken the law. It goes to show that they have broken the law and they are not getting away with it. And there's no way to just claim that these are just allegations at this point. Hundreds and hundreds of unfair labor practices lobbied, federal judges coming in and speaking on what Starbucks' campaigns are doing. And it's just all destructive to this brand's imagery that Howard so much cares about. It makes zero sense to me that this is their tactic at this point.
Yeah. Did you watch any of the hearings?
Yes, I watched the first part of it. I wasn't able to watch the whole thing because I obviously had to work that day. So I went in, but I watched like the first half hour to an hour of it.
And what did you feel?
It felt very superficial, especially with him saying that they made no for them to say that they haven't broken the law when it's clear that they have.
Yeah.
His backstory about starting Starbucks because of his father, and how he was treated as a truck driver, that felt very superficial because obviously there's been trucker unions, they've had to step up and do things. So the fact that he wanted to start a good company and is now fighting unions just seems very weird and very off to me, and how adamant he was to kind of shut us down during that hearing.
So where do you feel things stand right now, Dylan? Where are things right now?
Here, you want to switch real quick? Right. So, as it stands right now, we've actually made progress with the company for the first time in months. As to recent efforts to get to the bargaining table, they've stopped walking out of our negotiations. They finally started sending their lawyers to actually listen to our proposals, it seems. It shouldn't have taken 9+ months to get to this, though. I find it egregious that they have made claims that the union itself isn't sending partners to the table when there has been zero representation by actual Starbucks employees at the table. When I went yesterday, they had 2 lawyers and a partner relations worker there. No district managers, no regional managers, nothing like that. Just lawyers were on the end of that. So it's disingenuous the way that they frame us still. I have a feeling that the imagery that the company will continue to try to associate us with will continue to be negative as we get through the bargaining process. It feels like we have to punch up every single time, no matter what, because they refuse to give us room still, even at the table right now.
Given how much money someone like Howard Schultz has, what do you think is the deeper reason for why he resists unionizing efforts at Starbucks?
I think it's a hard thing to pinpoint, trying to look into the mind of a billionaire, because it's not like he was born into it, right? I don't think this type of mind frame came from a nature type of situation. It feels like this is the type of thing that builds with how he has run the business all along, I think. So I've heard, I don't know the exact details of it, like Starbucks, when it was a local in Seattle, had a union, I believe, in the 80s,
Really?
was something
Really?
like that. I don't know if it was cafes or distributors or something like that, but it was broken up when Howard acquired the company in 1981. Um, so I feel like his his deep-seated distrust in the union is something that he's held for a long time, and it's just not something he's had to speak on before uh, until finally, you know, it came to his doorfront with how it is today.
Claire, can you tell me a little something about your experience as a barista?
Yeah, I didn't really know what a union was. I'm honestly still not 100% sure on all the things that unions can do. I'm at Westchester. The store is extremely divided, and it's not just unions and not supporting unions. It's you either support the union or you don't, and you are nasty about
Wow.
it. And there are people at our store. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has mentioned it because, like I said, I got in a little late. I'm sorry. I'm a senior in high school, so there's a lot going on, and that's also another thing that I'll get into in a second. But I remember when I first started working, my trainer is very harsh, and I was warned ahead of time, basically, oh, be careful, she can be mean, but that's just her personality. And the second I wore a union pin, she's like, oh, what's that about? And I'm like, man, I'm a 17-year-old kid. I was, like, terrified. She's only 2 years older than I am. And I think the biggest issue / thing that I want to see gained with the union is potential for baristas and people other than just shift leads and ASMs to be perhaps listened to more when people are put in a position of power, because that person is now a shift lead at the store and has caused a lot of strife for people. I have made sure that my availability does not have me working with her as a shift lead because of the experiences I had with her. And a lot of people feel that she's harsh and that she's unkind to work with, and in general, that she should not have been given the shift lead position because she's always been power hungry and because of the way that she treats those under her, I think is the best way to put it. And like I said, I've got a lot going on. And so I have had a lot of issues with being health issues and college tours and all the things that the seniors in high school go through, plus the health issues. So I've been appreciative of specifically Dylan at our store, who has kind of been a voice of reason. I don't really know if anybody's ever wanted to fire me, but I know there have been times that people have told me, have threatened to write me up because of the call-outs that I've had to do, or leaving a shift even though I always get it covered. They've been like, this will get you fired, you're going to get in trouble, even though it's just general, my grandma wanted her kidney transplant, stuff like that. So I'm hoping the union helps continue to make sure that I can feel secure at work without having to worry about, something just in general in life coming up and me getting fired.
So you feel that if there were a union, you would feel more protected and you wouldn't feel so vulnerable. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Especially, like I said, I'm younger. I am the youngest barista at our store. And it's definitely a very vulnerable position to be in. Especially, I get nervous around people in power, shift leads especially, which is why I'm glad that Dylan's a shift lead, because I'm very comfortable speaking with them. And having a shift lead also be the union rep is really comforting, knowing that, there's someone in position of power who will fight for me if somebody's like, she needs to be fired because she called out, and Dylan will be like, no, here's the doctor's note. There's a health issue. You can't, Like I have like someone who I know will champion for me at work, which is comforting.
So what I'm picking up from hearing everybody speak, Dylan, is that it's as much a sense of psychological security, like a firm ground underneath your feet, less vulnerable to the whim of the company or the manager, that's a large part of it. Not the specifics of necessarily making more money, although that's important, but not even the specifics of more hours, although that's important. But everybody has talked in terms of the greater sense of personal security that you get when you're part of a team, when you're part of a collective effort, and you feel that the workers are as important as corporate. Am I right in surmising that?
Yeah, I mean, you're really right about this because part of the process for us has been try. We live in Virginia. We live in a right to work state, and part of my education of unionizing for a lot of people in the store, I don't know if Bree and Claire can speak on it, was educating people about how you can't be fired just for unionizing. Like I had to teach people a lot about their rights. Just about the fact that like people thought that they would get fired for being, this pro union, when it couldn't be quite more the opposite. And so teaching people that they had security in unionizing was something, where was an at-will employment state, right? Like you could be fired for nearly any reason, but I had to teach them about these categories of, hey, these are the things that keep you safe, your job secure, retaliation, unionizing, racial, sexual orientation, etc., those types of things. And yeah, unionizing is one of those protected things. So yeah, job security is such a big part of it. Respect and dignity is one of the articles that I've been reading in some of these contract proposals. Is something to address with the companies that whether they know it or not, there needs to be some accountability to how we're handling these things and a greater level of accountability from upper management for how it's going.
They probably really know who you are, and you're probably not the most popular person over there with that power structure. Is that correct?
I don't have a problem painting a target on my back if it means that I'm protecting the rank and file at our store. I'm not afraid to be who I am to them. I think some people have been truly deluded or scared by the company and their tactics into being the way that they are, and I don't hold that against them. It's actually your right to not support the union, and I support that. What I'm not going to support is this company that wants to push people back into their holes, give us these ridiculous wages that don't create a livability, especially in some of these inner city areas where rent is driven up, so inflation is at an all-time high, and I'm going to fight for their rights just as much as I'm fighting for mine. So I want to create a workplace that's worth working for all of these people, where I don't see 100% turnover rate every year, because in my 5 years, I've seen the entire staff turn over 3-4 times. I'm now the only partner in my store who's been there longer than 4 years. That's ridiculous. And that includes our store manager. I mean, like, I'm the only partner on our staff who has been there that long now. That's insane to me. If you love a job, you want to work that job, you want to change that job to be workable. And that's exactly what we're doing here.
Just last question. What are the main ways that Starbucks is trying to suppress this effort?
I'll let some of the others talk first about some of their experience before I can rattle off about it.
I have been personally, when I was organizing in Baltimore, my manager would have sit down meetings with a lot of people who he knew were on the fence about the election, stating things about you're going to lose your health care. He said to me, I wasn't on the fence, but he still said to me a couple times, like, I don't know if you're going to be able to transfer to New York, because I had already made that clear that that was going to happen. So a lot of scare tactics coming from lower management. As far as corporate, one, the unfair firing of workers, such as one in New York, and I know your friend from Virginia as well. Um, that's its own form of union busting because it's scaring people.
Right.
Right. Then they're also putting up flyers in the back of the store. I know when I came, shortly after I came to my New York store, people knew I come from a union store. Not long after, there were posters put up in the back from Starbucks with QR codes stating, "Do you want to know more about the union? Scan here." And then it goes straight to one of those Starbucks union busting websites.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like that union girl in my store. Still kind of am, but we're working on it. So things like that directly from corporate have been frustrating.
So, my last question: are you all hopeful that you're moving in the direction that you need to go, and that the unionizing efforts at Starbucks will continue despite any resistance from corporate?
Whether Starbucks likes it or not, the future of the labor movement is strong in the new generation of people who are coming of age right now. The belief in labor has never been stronger, and every old guard labor activist that I've met through this has told me the exact same thing over again. That I'm so glad that I know that the future is bright again because of how unionizing is finally being looked at in a new light again in America. Um, my my grandparents, were coal miners in West Virginia in the 80s during one of the biggest pushbacks against union effort in America. Was really after Reagan and Nixon axed unions' power in America. You saw a big change in the outlook of unionization. One of Congress brought forward during the uh, testimony for Howard Schultz during the panel, they brought forth a labor expert talking about the decline in union membership over time, and it doesn't address the fact that the decline in union membership is due to stigmatization of unionizing America, lack of power of unions in America, an underfunded National Labor Relations Board that has little power over these billion-dollar companies and their $1,000 an hour lawyers. These types of things drive union membership down, not public support of unions, which, if you look at these major companies unionizing all around us now, shows that those types of things have no effect on public support of it. It's the belief in change that drives unionization, and that's exactly what Hope is creating now.
Well, you are clearly the voice of a leader, Dylan, and it will be very interesting to see the role you play as the years go by, because I don't think that this is. I think you've found your niche and you've found your larger role. Would you guys all agree with me about that? Yeah, yeah, you have good leadership. Is there anything that any of you, before we leave, would like to add? Any thoughts about Starbucks, about the union effort, about your feelings being part of all this? Anything that any of you would like to say in closing?
I just like to say, as far as New York City goes, I live and work in the second largest market for Starbucks. If you've ever been to New York, you see there's one on every single block. Uh, they're 2 minutes apart, walking distance. So we live in a huge market for Starbucks. So it's so important for us to get a movement going here specifically. As far as hope goes, or that question, the New York City Department of, what does the DCWP stand for? I forget. The DCWP has been a big part of our movement. As far as reinstating workers, I've helped our workers file 40 complaints against Fair Workweek law. So we are definitely getting things going here. And it's so important to the rest of the movement to organize a place like New York City.
Have any of the New York City Starbucks actually organized yet? Formed a
Yes,
union yet?
yeah, we have 7.
Great.
the Chelsea Roastery. There's one in
Yeah, the roastery is
yes,
a big
that's
one.
a big one. I was out there picketing with them fairly recently. It was great.
Where are you located? Where's the store you're working at located?
I'm in the financial district, so Lower Manhattan.
Oh, right. You talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's see. There's Ditmars, 2 in Brooklyn, and I think one other one in Manhattan. I'm not sure exactly where
Great.
it is.
Great.
But yeah, organizing this area is so important. But I definitely
Nick,
hope that we're in the right
well,
direction.
I'm sure that you will continue to be part of the effort in New York, and New York won't even know it, what's hit it because Ryla's there. Nick, do you have any final words to say?
Yeah, I just really hope that Starbucks will start sitting down at the table more, because I think negotiation is the pretty big part of this, just because our voices aren't getting heard, and I feel like a lot of our issues are getting swept under the rug with them not sitting down at the table.
Thank you. Claire, any final words?
Yeah, the biggest thing is I hope that some of like the stigma, if that's the best word for it, around supporting the union, or specifically on Dylan's behalf, being the union rep for the store, is kind of removed, because I've experienced, like I said, I wore the union pin very like this big, and I had people being like, "What's that about?" You're too young to know what that is. You like, I mean, one of the shift leaders at my store told me, "You're not 18. You can't vote yet, so your opinion doesn't really matter. Figure it out later." And I was like, I'm like a senior, please, And there are a lot of people at the store who are not fond of Dylan and who will say a lot of unkind things about Dylan, especially because of the union, and be like, Dylan's trying to ruin the company, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? So I hope that, especially for people who are like, from like the young perspective of getting hired in and being like, what is absolutely going on? Hopefully some of that negativity and pushback of just simply supporting the union, which I think is everyone's right, kind of shifts away with as unions become bigger and bigger.
Is that even true that you can't vote until you're 18?
Yes, for like state elections, like official elections, but I mean, I'm registered to vote because I turn 18 in a couple months. I'm not sure how it works with the union, but I feel better now. I wasn't sure about that. I knew like the state elections, that's what they were referring to, but like I said,
See, that's why you need a union leader to explain those things to you. Yep. I was you once. Brian, do you have any final words for us?
I guess all I could say is that I am hopeful. I feel like once we, I guess, get the bargains, or like we get all of the deals going, and we're heard, then maybe other people will start to understand more, or like support it more once they see what we can do together. Because I just feel like people are scared, or like they fear for their jobs, so they're not really gonna look into what a union is. So I just hope that more people are educated later, and yeah, that's about it.
Well, I wish you all the very best, and thank you very much for expressing yourselves. Does anybody have any final words you want to say? Does everybody feel you had the opportunity to express yourselves in the effort?
I just appreciate you having us here, Marianne. It means a lot to us.
Dylan. It's all about magnifying voices, So thank you very, very much. And when we start getting it all together, it won't be a long video, but hopefully it will be impactful, and people will feel that a little more light was shed on what's happening. And I wish you all the very, very best. And I hope we stay in touch. Dylan, I'm glad we have the contact that's been able to continue. And I hope that as the days and months and years go by, we'll just do more and more to make good things happen for labor and for the country.
You just let me know what you need from me, Marianne. We'll be there for you.
It's great meeting all of you. Thank you. And thank you for staying up so late. Thank you.